So really, this is a suite of teachings. It's an opportunity for us to share the knowledge that we have in the DAP, and just to give people different insights as they're thinking about work programs, thinking about areas that they want to be leading on, and bringing in that other side of our social economic scientists. So really pleased to be able to introduce Sulasi Vinbola, who has joined us, Suli, as he likes to be called, who has joined us from New Zealand. I understand the weather is, there's a bit of a storm in New Zealand, so huge thanks for continuing to join us today. So Suli is a senior lecturer in environmental management at Lincoln University in New Zealand. He's a transdisciplinary scholar specialising in Pacific studies, international development, human geography, ethnoecology, and ethnography. And his work is particularly focused on climate resilience and adaptation, sustainable land use, waterways and ocean management, as well as indigenous innovations. Suli's scholarly practice has mainly been around it's been critically shaped by his lived experience, having grown up in Pacific Island communities. And that has been a foundational commitment to improving their livelihoods, the social, ecological justice and cognitive justice. His practice research areas impacts is really around community determination through applied action. And his research investigates the nexus of traditional ecological knowledge and scientific frameworks with community-driven development, particularly in agroecology and the blue economy, and he particularly utilising decolonised methodologies and discursive analysis. So whistle stop tour, there's also a link that can give you a little bit more, well, that gives you the sort of overview of Suli. But what we'll be having is just an overview from Suli in relation to indigenous insights and how you can put those into project design. We're going to, I think about 40 minutes is roughly your talk, Suli, 35, 40 minutes. And then there's an opportunity for questions after. So please either stick those in the chat or raise your hand towards the end. So with no further ado, I'll hand over to Suli.
All right. Kia ora koutou katoa. Nisambula Vinaka. I'm Suli Winambola. I'm originally from Fiji. And at this moment, I would like to also acknowledge the land I'm standing on, the Runanga of Ngai Tahu at Christchurch, New Zealand. So thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me here. It's 9 p.m., so wouldn't like to disturb your morning, but most of the stuff that I will share to you derived from my both as my personal lived experience in Fiji and in the Pacific Islands, as well as the research that I do afterwards. What is important to me is that I lived the life that I'm researching, trying to research, and moved to New Zealand in 2016. So at the very basic, the idea of self-sufficiency, where your food come from the ocean or the rivers or from the forest, your medicine, your building materials, everything. I've lived in such communities for a very long time, and I worked as a part of the Fijian educationist government sector for 12 years, and I moved to New Zealand to study and been working here till now. So that is the experience. I came to do a postgraduate diploma in international development, and then progressed to do a PhD in international development studies. So that's the kind of education and background in New Zealand. So I've taught and researched in 3 universities in New Zealand, but majority of the work that I do is really based in development, community-driven development, and all those stuff that's mentioned about me in the Pacific Island countries. All right. So let me share my presentation. Bear with me, please.
See that?
Can you see it?
Yeah. I don't know if you can put it on full screen because we can see the. Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much.
All good?
Yeah,
I need to
that's all good.
right. Sorry, I was just figuring with how to move the window to the right. So the topic today is partnering with indigenous peoples, and I think I'm with you. I thought to myself, all right, I'll go to study. I've lived as an indigenous person from the very, very basic that I don't need a supermarket to go to support my lives and my family. I was brought up by my grandparents, and I was taught that those kind of very indigenous traditional knowledge skills to support our lives. And then while I was working, I've supported community-driven development while engaged in my day-to-day work routine. So I support youth development, women in development, and most of these are community-driven development. And I've seen projects in and out of our communities for many, many years. And I also have seen some issues with it, and some were benefiting. And I thought to myself, it's a very good way to study um, development studies or community-driven development through an international lens. Um, so I think I'm with you in terms of what works best. But uh, post PhD, I graduated in 2020, and till now, I am still learning. I am still trying to figure out what works best. And to me, it's really, I thought that all my lived experiences and the theoretical underpinnings that I've discovered during the PhD and post PhD, and while trying to work with communities back in the Pacific Islands, it's a very complex issue. Um, so I'll start with the story of Ernesto Ciroli, who if someone have read the book The Ripples of Zambezi. So Ernesto Ciroli was an Italian NGO working for Italian NGO, very young guy at that time, and went to Africa. And Italian, they grow good tomatoes, as they have said. And when they near a village near the Zambezi River, they introduced the idea to them. And then, why you guys are not doing agriculture here? It's good soil for agriculture. We're going to grow tomatoes. But the villagers were not so keen to engage in the program. And then, okay, let's pay them because I think they are lazy. And then they pay the villagers to come and work with them. And then later on, a lot of them don't turn up. And then they were wondering, these guys, what's wrong with them? Later on, the tomatoes was about to be harvested, really good round tomatoes, and then the hippo came out from the Zambezi River and destroyed all the vegetables. And Estes Riroli and his group of co-workers went to the village so frustrated and asked them, why you didn't tell us in the first place? And those villagers told them, you didn't ask in the first place as well. So that really become my base reflection of, okay, development for indigenous peoples should be participatory. We should ask them and do the hard stuff because as experts, including myself, we know lots of things. We've read lots of books. We've been to formal education, and then it's so hard for us to keep our mouth shut and listen. So that become okay. Every good development need to be participatory. Uh, Sorry, I can't do next. You know how can do that?
Um, oh, you're still here, which is good. So we've
Yeah.
lost your screen now. So I don't know if sometimes if you don't go on full screen, it can work. So we might need to, if you share again, does it work if you keep it on that screen?
Yeah.
So maybe, yeah, we can just keep it on that. Everybody can see that, can't they? So we don't need to do full screen. This will work if the forward isn't working
Yeah. If I go
sometimes.
full,
Yeah,
because I used to use multiple screen back in my office. I'm at home with just the laptop. I think
yeah.
it's
No, that's
better.
fine. Let's just use
fixing
this
fixing
approach and
it
that's
will
great.
take a lot of time. Okay, pardon me. So this is the outline of my talk today. A bit of context setting. That means I got an email and said, please let us know the rationale why we have to do this, why we work with indigenous people, why we need to understand working with indigenous people. So a bit of context setting. Um, and why understanding the history is mandatory. It's needed, not just as a what we can do on paper, so that it looks good. The call for inclusion, the good development model, and why the good development model, participatory model that I believed in, has really a gap in it, and the shock doctrine and shock therapy. A bit of my story of why I come around with that, and then a lasting solution. Um, so, indigenous peoples all over the world, most of them, not all, but majority were colonized. But before the settlers, before colonialism came through, they were vibrant peoples. They were nations. They were tribes of people who were vibrant, who were living lives. They were trading. For example, in the Pacific, in the textbooks, Columbus was the one who discovered the Pacific, etc. But we have stories and we have DNA scientific investigation that really discovered that we were trading with the people Peru, South America, before even Columbus, and there are scientific evidence, and even the trading of sweet potatoes, kumala, in my language, Kumara for Maori as native people of New Zealand, and for a tribe in Peru, it's Komal. So there are some stories, but there are scientific investigations that. So they were vibrant people, and there are varied form of colonization systems for the individual countries that were colonized. There were different wave of colonization and processes for example, First Nations in America and in Canada, and different from the native peoples of New Zealand, the indigenous peoples of New Zealand, the Maoris, which was so different to the indigenous Fijians. For example, for First Nations in America and Canada, and for indigenous peoples of New Zealand, the Maori, their systems of colonization was very bad. Their land was confiscated. Their language was almost lost. Their culture was subjugated. For the Fijians was a bit different. I'm Fijian. I'm indigenous Fijian. So we were the protectorate. So those people who came to colonize us, the British, were learned from the systems in Africa, and we should protect them. It'll be good. It'll be easier later. But in protecting them, and that's another lecture altogether, because they were protected, they were sidelined from economic activities. So going forward, development activities, they were not there. So they don't really understand that. Indentured laborers were brought from India to come and work in the sugarcane fields in Fiji. Later on, they were given um, pieces of land with a lease title, and they can use that later on after the indenture system of the colonization. They were given those lease title. They used those lease title to get financial backing from Fiji Development Bank. And then, if you have been to Fiji or if you are planning to Fiji, look for the business district. The businesses, the shop owners are predominantly for Indo-Fijians rather than the indigenous Fijians. Even though my PhD would like to, I tried to unpack because we were blamed as indigenous peoples of Fiji are lazy. to take up work or in the spectrum of development, which is not true. The structures were not there for us. And more on to understanding their history, which is mandatory and not just a tick box. Their identity was not only forcibly extracted but demonized. So, for example, I'll go back to this slide. The meaning of being demonized is this. I'll unpack poverty. The word, a lexical semantic analysis, the word for poverty or being poor in my country, in Fiji, is called Ndravu Ndravua. And if you unpack it, there's one word called Ndravu. It comes from that word. Ndravu means color of gray, color of brown, ash-like. So it was coined in all over the Pacific, indigenous peoples of the Pacific. There is no word that directly translated to poverty. You'll string a few words together to put together. So that's from a lexical semantic analysis. And these were during the colonization era, and the missionaries, of course, came. They were living in kind of modern roofing iron top houses, and the indigenous Fijians were living in thatch roof houses. When they built their thatch roof houses, it made from reeds. Reeds are green in color, and as they age along, it become brownish and gray. So these were people with brown skin, walking the brown land, living in the either brownish or grayish house. So that is termed as Ndravundravua, so of poverty. So if we go here, most of their systems were demonized, and I've been working with my tribe. Can we go back and build thatch roof houses? Because there are scientific evidence that came from Meiji University, from Japanese universities, that these vernacular architecture are really good because they don't have nails, they don't have rigid joints. They have coconut sennets that binds them together and are flexible in tropical five category cyclone. If they are not broken into pieces compared to modern houses which are broken into pieces. After a tropical cyclone, your resilience of getting back into a thatch roof house is just one day because you just get the materials from the environment and then move in. Um, those who still practice these knowledge systems, they are seen as outdated, kainakoro in my language. That means you are from a very rural village, like myself, with a negative connotation. You are not modern. You are out of touch of modernity. Tamatambutumbuto, heathen, still in the darkness. And there are many stories that in my tribe and in related tribes that every places our ancestors have named some places, have some myths that there are some ghosts in it. For example, Ravi Ravini Tevor, where the ghost lin, or Sudu the Romba. This is Sudu means breast, and the Romba means banging on the chest. It's a ghost that live in the mangroves. And the new evangelistic churches told them, oh, because everything is demonic, then we need to get the chainsaw and cut all those forests. So they cut them down. So what happened later on? The women who've been fishing in this mangrove are not able to do it anymore. Okay, livelihood based on these streams or forests. They say that their forests are their rivers have dried up. The systems that really support their own production system, their food system, is not there anymore. So it's always good to understand those stories, understand those basics, and you know their land was alienated, their names were changed, and names carry meanings. For example, they were in boarding schools. Change your name, or you're not going to school. The women were raped. There are many stories around this that is always emotional. And the livelihood production systems that I've talked about, their land, their own production of managing their own food systems were forcefully removed. I went to Fiji last year just to teach our youths how to harvest and how to locate wild tubers from our forest, because that is the food that you go to post any post cyclone or climate disaster. Unfortunately, majority of our youths don't really understand it. It's not covered in schools. It's not covered in the curriculum, etc. The first help that come to these rural and remote indigenous communities is either weeks or months away. So, do they have the support system? Yes. Traditional ecological knowledge will supply them food for many, many days or years if there's no help. But the thing is, cognitive justice, knowledge system to support those practices are not there anymore. So, some people, some academics that I hear last week was um, Adaptation Futures conference here at Christchurch. Hope that um, I didn't know that anybody from the team were really here, or I must have missed. So there are a lot of academics who said, "Ah, let's forget, we know this colonization thingy. Get over it. It's a new era. Let's move forward." But there are a lot of research on this trauma and hurt are very intergenerational. You come to these tribes and talk to them how it's really affecting them. Their worldviews were demonized, branded inferior, um, and people, indigenous peoples all over the world, have different phases, are in the different journeys to go back home to fully realize what indigeneity means. But despite all this, we're still here. Indigenous peoples survived beyond millennia. Do we call that resilience? If we call that resilience or ideas that help them to adapt, then could we use those systems? Could we build onto those systems to build whatever project that we want to do? And there's a different story that an article that I wrote on if you want to help someone shut up and listen was the idea that a foreign entity, foreign aid project that came to our tribe and told them we're going to grow new crops because this is what the funders want, and we're going to bring market to your doors. You don't need to travel to town. So the euphoria of the market and more money coming right at your door. You don't have to travel to town, which is like for us about many hours, which we don't like to do. It's expensive, and they believe in them. So they grow the new crops. They've forgotten all the traditional crops, agricultural crops that their ancestors grow. They've forgotten all those crops that they have spiritual, cultural connections to. So what happened? They were also told you'll have the staples that you grow are very long term. You look after them 9 months, or you look after them uh, 3 years for cover, or yeah, the cover. But for this particular new commodity, you will be able to sell it to the market 3 times a year. And then they started cultivating it. And later on, because they don't have any connection to it, don't have expertise living right near the village to tell them when to harvest, it became over matured. And then they lost the over matured crop, the new one, and they lost the traditional crops. What's painful was they lost the planting material because for indigenous peoples, they keep the seeds and then they'll replant for the new season. They lost both of it. So I was doing my PhD at that time. I was frustrated when my mom called me up. We need your help. We need to fundraise to feed these guys. There's no food in the plantations. There's no food in the new plantation. So it was something personal to me. I was frustrated, and I asked them, "Did you even tell them that what do you need?" No. They just told us to do it. So I came up with that article. But it was used against me when I was applying for my new job. When you go to the classroom, do you do this? Do you everything you do you must go and you won't agree with any other? No. These are different. It was for project back home. So the call for inclusion, Pacific peoples and indigenous peoples globally, we have we can contribute to many solutions to the world. Um, as the world going through poly crisis, climate crisis, economic globalization, etc., our communities are living in shocks. There are communities within the system of crux of continuous recovery from a lot of shocks. So indigenous peoples have, really have a lot of knowledge of biodiversity, management of their nature resources, climate adaptation, um, community-based initiatives, health integrations, a resilience to a lot of changes. And the importance of inclusion is incorporating different knowledge systems to the crisis that we are trying to solve for many, many years. Multiple ways of knowing or multiple intelligence, and the right of peoples that we are helping, we're trying to help with aid. Their rights and their knowledge systems should be included, which is the good development model, as we all know. Um, we we really need our project to be participatory as much as we can. Include them when we are planning. Not, when I was analyzing that article, this article, want to help someone set up and listen. I talked to some of them, and then they said, "Oh, we derive those um, we plan up the proposal in our office away from Fiji, and then we brought it over, fly in, talk to some individuals in town from those communities, and yeah, that's how we strike the project. And I think that is the worst case scenario. But a lot of good projects are coming into indigenous communities, participatory mapping, participatory rural appraisal, or participatory methodologies by Robert Chambers, which aim to enhance local capacity, empower, and protect inclusive decision making. JEDC, we've been using that um, for the assessment of projects as well. We seek to strengthen indigenous governance networks so that the goal is to equip communities to look after themselves more, and then they can make good decisions. So empowerment skills, empowerment and capacity building really work for these communities. But there's a gap. So the gap in the model is when the project finishes. Um, this is a picture of Nandi International Airport in Fiji during COVID-19, where experts flocked into the airport and fly away. And so the key question is, what happened when everybody else leave these communities, and when communities get back to normal, get back to their routine? Um, and the issue is because our projects always have an end date. So we created a bubble of empowerment, and then unfortunately we have to leave. So then there's something happen. There's a group of people, a group of entities, powerful entities, will visit these communities. So they will tempt them and tell them, whatever you need money for schools, you need money to send your children to school, scholarships, build good houses, which are climate resilient. We'll build your seawall, better quality of life. But in exchange, now there's a huge conversation that I'm engaged in some of the research that I do on ocean seabed mining. We need your mountains for logging, and we need more land for commercial agriculture, and we need more beautiful beaches, sandy beaches for commercial tourism industry. So in the work of Naomi Klein, the shock doctrine, this is a disaster. This is disaster capitalism, the shock doctrine in action. It exploits the chronic state of crisis and recovery to push through exploitative deals. So that's an example from my island. In Vunulevu, there's a province called Mbua. They were promised that it would bring lots of money, mining company from China. And then now they're still complaining that they have to live with the devastation of the environment. And remember, indigenous communities, they own resources collectively. Nobody can just agree. So collective dealings are done. And then when the chiefs agree, where everyone else agree, then the government put their stamp on, and then the foreign investor will straight away go to work. Um, so that is the worst case scenarios that have happened. The devastating question will how will our communities in the Pacific Island countries or in SEEDs, small island developing states, reject deals when these extractive companies provide the very thing they need? How will they respond? If you ask myself, do you believe in a tribe? Yes. Do you believe in a tribe to make good decisions when they are given lots of money? No, never. Participatory tools offer long-term collective resilience, very good. But the shock therapy, because they are continuously in shock, in recovery mode, and when financial relief comes in, that's when the problem occurs. I've been there. I'll say you. It's a night time. I work well with stories when I'm in a lot of been working long days. So I'll share another story with you. So before I left, that was the very year before I left home to come to New Zealand. I was the spokesperson for my tribe. We have conserved a huge acre of our forest. Some of our native trees, there'll be 10 people holding hands around those huge trees, or 12 people. And there was this foreign entity who had leased those land for conservation for carbon. And it was, as we know now, I realized later that carbon trade was still experimented. And they were promised for 40 years, not a single benefit that goes down to these communities. So I was in my garden, and one of my chiefs come to me. Would you be able to talk to the lawyers? And the lawyers came with government entities and Native Land Trust Board, Ministry of Forestries, powerful people came to my village, and I was there to deal with them. And they told me what was, and I asked them, what do you want? All we want is don't want an extension to the lease. And then I fought hard, and my argument was that our people were promised you put dreams into their heads, into their brains. It was never manifested for 30 to 40 years. All those people who signed, our ancestors who signed, have passed on, and we are not going to extend. And then the very last trick they had was the briefcase. They went back to their truck. They brought a briefcase full of cash. I can see people's eyes open up. And this is very emotional to me when my chiefs, few of them, told me this is what we need. Please back down. Uh, yeah, the promise of money fractures community and solidarity. It overrides carefully built consensus that we want to do with our people. And CIFAs would like to do this too. And the missing piece is the drivers, the forces that coerce individuals, and what caused them to agree in extractive means is not really being amplified or researched. So go back to that story. Because the dream was placed, they were managing their forest well. They were hunting. They were just removing whatever they need. But when the promise of money and development was implanted in their brains, even now they can't get away from it. They are doing illegal logging, massive devastation in that forest that were once uh, conserved for good reason. So my question really is during colonization, resources were extracted from periphery to the core, to the imperial core, and then aid from global north, rich countries, powerful countries, to developing countries, which is good. Help them in a way or the other. But the question is the problem which got us here will never get us out. So the Bisamoyo, economist from Africa, wrote the book Dead Aid. Billions of dollars in aid tunneled into Africa, and the system doesn't really have a way to absorb that capacity. So it fueled into corruption. but it also inhibits many innovations that have been working in those communities pre-colonization. So the way forward for me is this is the first time I'm presenting this. Is let us not see what's wrong, let us see what is strong. These guys, these tribes are resilient. Let us build nations, not just projects within a globalized world. And I've worked with some Maori colleagues who did this so well, of working within against beyond and beyond colonial capitalism. For example, the Te Runanga, which is the tribunal, Maori tribunal authorities. These are democratic economic system governance based at the tribe, but trained up to work with Western systems, where you can omit corruption and all those issues that goes with developing states in their tents when they handle projects or huge amount of money. You know, and they also say that if you are a successful person with a PhD, but you don't have your tribe in your mind or you haven't been working with a tribe, that's a first no for us when we recruit individuals to work in their tribal governance system. And working within for Maori indigenous peoples of New Zealand is working with the government to get some of their land back, build businesses on those land, and again is to buy back some of the land were confiscated from them. Beyond colonialism is where they work with their marae, like the small villages. This is where they keep the fire burning. They use most of this money to support indigenous peoples, whether in education or at the marae, where they practice their culture, relearn their language, indigenous knowledge system, and traditional ecological knowledge, and so forth. Coming to the end of this presentation, um, analyzing the power structures, the global north versus global south. Funders, of course, have more power, and their imperative is also impactful in how aid is enacted, as you can hear from my story. Analyzing the power dynamics in communities is something that really not understood well. There are powerful dynamics in communities that we would like to to engage with. Powerful women, powerful men, and different in indigenous communities. I think this is a loophole too. Um, there's growing evidence that indigenous peoples in urban areas that mostly are in touch with these projects. Oh, I want to do project in this particular tribe. Oh, I'm from that tribe. But there's growing evidence that they have varied views and different realities from those tribal members in rural villages and communities where the project is to be implemented. Um, and again, back to the last slide, is supporting the setup of democratic tribal systems at the tribal level so that we would be able to combat a lot of issues in regards to corruption, nepotism, and etc. Um, that goes together with supporting indigenous peoples and governance. And issues in regard to sovereignty, for example, in Fiji, the chiefs signed the deed of cessions and ceded to Great Britain. But during independence, it was the governance was given back to the prime minister in a Westminster system government. But we never ceded sovereignty, self-determination, remaining the tribes. Governance was ceded. So I think self-determination, aspirations of local peoples, resilience of local peoples, power dynamics within the local need to be unpacked and need to be understood, and in order for projects to work nicely. Participatory development, empowerment, partnership program can build in this. Why I moved further than participatory development, because I've been trying to do participatory development and in community-driven development in a lot of communities that I know, in tribes that I come from, in people and worldviews that I understand. I struggle. A better way to absorb development shocks, corruption practices, and issues related to rampant economic globalization in developing nations is the system that I've talked about. Because I've seen that in real time and I've worked with Maori research colleagues who work in their runanga or their tribal governance authority. And the Maori economy is one of the strongest economy in New Zealand. But given that, then there's connotation about it's $1 billion industry. It's growing. They are trading all over the world, but they are growing um, works that they say, maybe they want to run their own government, but or maybe they want to run their own structure apart from all the other people in New Zealand. I'll take that conclusion to Tatipene, Oregon. Tatipene, Oregon is the Upoko, the huge chief who fought hard to bring a tribal tribunal, work with the government, and reinstate and one of the pillar of Maori economy. This is what he said. We as a country, in terms of indigenous people and other people in New Zealand, we grow to become more accommodating of each other. It's not something brand new to indigenous peoples. We were trading and growing with other people before colonization. So to me, this is and part of his word was that we shouldn't look these as separate governance. We should look at these as building indigenous nations so that they can support the country, build the country that they are in. Yep, on the dot, 39 minutes. Thank you. I'm open for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Seeley. That was fascinating and really broad cover of a huge amount of work, and covering such a huge amount of issues, from sort of, I guess, empowerment, power dynamics, which we know are really complex. And I guess that kind of, how science has also helped myth busting and correcting history. So that was really fascinating. So huge thanks for your time. And lots of really great resources and materials, which will be really good to share some of those papers around the group so people can delve in deeper. So I'm going to open up now for questions. We have one in the chat, but please put your hand up as well if you have any questions or have any insights or thoughts. Comments are also welcome. So Joe has a question, just I don't know how to pronounce that, Talona sessions. So just what are they? I think it was mentioned in your presentation. And apologies for the pronunciation, please pronounce that correctly as well.
Yeah, it's Talanoa session. Talanoa is can be in a very reductionist way. I can say just talking to people, but in a cultural, holistic way, it's having a critical, open, and friendly discussion around hard issues, complex issues that people are facing. The growing. Sorry, my English is not English tonight. Um, there's a lot of work, a huge amount of work based on using Talanoa as a research methodology rather than just an interview. Because when you interview people, I've been to. So I was a fellow of a climate project that the biggest research project ever to be done in the Pacific, covered 16 countries, and a small country in the Pacific is Niue, and this is me with my team. We went there, all Pacific researchers, to warn you, and these are Pacific peoples. And we met the parliamentarians and went down to the community hall. And one of the parliamentarians, because it's a small country, small island nation, and stood up. Oh, I welcome you guys this morning at the government house, but I would like to ask you a question. You guys, um, experts from the Pacific, but we want to tell you you are a waste of time. So all my friends were really derailed and okay how to respond. I was able to respond, and I told them I really agree because two flights post COVID-19 before I think it used to be three or four, and very less tourists, a lot of researchers, and a lot of people who work for projects. And the time that is needed from these communities for consultation is high, and they don't have time to go fishing. They don't have time to do their garden, etc. Which is why participatory talanoa is necessary, because in the talanoa sessions, you have to adhere and approach them in a very cultural way. Just for example, if I visit home, there are a lot of cultural things that I need to do. Entry protocol. I need to present kava in my cultural context. I need to bring in some stuff because to honor the people who have passed on, and because I was living in New Zealand, um, and I was not present. There were many, because we are tribes. We own resources collectively, so we do social cultural ceremonies collectively. Because I miss them, if the vacance, the absence, I need to come home. So Talanoa have all these processes in different communities in the Pacific, so that you would be accepted as one. And once you follow those protocols and processes, or decolonized research methodologies, in the Maori term, they call Kaupapa Research Framework by Linda Tuhiwai Smith. If you want that book, it's called Decolonizing Methodologies. In the um, Fijian nations of the Itoke or indigenous Fijian, it's called Vanua Research Methodologies by Nambombo Mbamba. These are books which are very helpful, because once you move through those protocols, they gain your trust because of the fly in, fly out. And we as researchers, we bugger it all, because the university, even indigenous researchers, university need your publication, and the turnover of research need to be very quickly. So forming relationship is expensive. It's time. It takes a lot of time, and a lot of effort. It's very stressful. So building those researchers for academics is not really a thing, which is the advantage of me. I do research back home. My relationship is very longitudinal. I was there. They are my people. I can say stuff like the men were not really helpful. I told them, you guys are useless. The women are wonderful, because they. So Talanoa in that space is a culturally way of gaining trust, while not interviewing them like a journalistic interview, an interrogative interview. You put in the hints, the cues, and people come in, and you do that with food like a normal living situation, and we do it with drinking kava, which is a social drink. And before the one other point is, Fiji, as we call it, is a nation of coup. There are a lot of coups, and there was the rebel groups and the military were fighting each other and killing each other. These were all indigenous Fijians in the military and in the rebel. And the negotiators, Western negotiators, were flown in with lots of money. They were not able to get them together. What got them together is through those protocols in Talanoa. They put the guns away, they talk to each other, they solve their issues. And that's the strength of that contextualized to these islands. But different islands and communities in the Pacific, they have different protocols. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Holly.
Can you hear me now?
And
Yep.
Okay, sorry, my mic. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. And I actually think you might have answered my question with how to consult with communities. And actually, it's more complicated, and having to actually do the research beforehand, and not just going in before a project and consulting them and saying I've consulted them, and then them never actually seeing the benefits of the project or being involved in the project later on. And yeah, so I'm actually going to go to my second question. I recently was watching a presentation about kind of AI in international development and artificial intelligence and machine learning, and this kind of new wave, and how this might impact as a good thing or a bad thing for communities, and how some communities could utilize it to reinvigorate their languages into governance structures and things like that. So I just wanted to ask, kind of, in your opinion, is there concerns or is it an exciting opportunity? How do we make sure that this kind of AI revolution is done ethically and through kind of involving communities?
Well, yeah, I expected this question to come. Yeah, it's one of my interest and growing research into that space. I think AI being used in a way, in a humanity, in a human way, where the human is important, and I think that's a collective struggle for all of us. But I would like to put it as a base that colonization was based on race, Darwinism theory, but the new revolution of AI is the tech giant against humanity and used in a good way to combat issues that's important to all of us. For example, to combat issues in relation to climate, issues in relation to language invigoration, revitalization, issues in related to make the world a thriving place for everyone. But on the other hand, unfortunately, there are growing concern all over the world. In the United States, communities are complaining they're rising utility bills because of data centers are built right close to their homes. The light at night, the sounds. I researched into it because our vice prime minister put his hands up and said we want to host a Google data center at home in Fiji. I thought, oh my gosh, have they not researched this earlier on? What will happen to the utility bills of people? And there's a lot of complaints around. But yes, again, issues in regards to climate, issues in regards to humanity. I think AI has a huge role, but it needs to be democratized in a way for human survival and for us to thrive together. Because at the moment, it's the tech giant against all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Suli. And I think, was Lorna, was that in relation to your question, or is that why the hand went down?
No, my hand went down just in the interest of time, actually. But my question was related to the previous bits that you were talking about. But also, thank you so much for such an interesting presentation, because I feel it's information I should have known, but I absolutely did not understand the complexities of it. It's really emotional the way you talked through it. So thank you. But I suppose what I was wondering, and maybe it's obvious, but from a practical point of view, for our projects and our programs that we're designing, obviously there's so much that we need to do to make sure that we are integrating it and designing it participatorily, as you said. So I suppose it's about us making sure that we allocate enough time and effort and money, I suppose, up front at the beginning to make sure that we're actually going out and talking to the people that are involved, as opposed to just not allocating enough time, I suppose, at the beginning. I suppose what I'm wondering is what's the best way that we can make a practical change to our program design to make sure that we are properly integrating all the different views.
Yeah, I'll weave it into a talanoa that I was engaging in one of the communities as a story to answer your question. So I asked them, okay, when you have people flying in to come and talk to you, what happened? And then they said, this was in Palau, one of the smallest island, but tied up to America, to the United States, one of their rim country. And they said, when they fly in and we don't do, because we are over-researched, there are lots of, she said, we won't die from climate crisis or any other crisis, we'll die from projects. Small communities, different projects, different waves of projects coming in. And she said, the most important thing to us is trust. And trust takes time, takes resources before we build everything else. And I asked her, okay, what is the worst case scenario? and this not her. And I did lots of research in the 16 countries around the Pacific that I've been working in terms of climate adaptation and resilience. Oh, we just tell them a story to make them happy, and then so that we can go back to our garden or go back fishing. And then I've been warning my peers at the university, maybe we should look at some of the case studies that you do from the Pacific, because those stories are not valid. They just want to push you away so that you can publish those articles in beautiful, high-ranked journals. And to conclude, I know that even when I want to buy cover, because I need to do traditional protocols for families in the Pacific to gain their trust, so that they don't hate me coming back home to do a project. My university doesn't cover that. They said, well, that's not research. So there's a lot of rethinking, because if you guys are going to plan into building trust, maybe it won't go with the policy of the organization, because most of these are not captured. Most of these are not formalized. And then we might keep our job. We might not finish doing development in these communities because it's not working, so that we keep on reproducing more jobs for us. Just that as a joke. But I think beforehand, before we even put the idea is that before we even put it into proposal, more effort should be diverted to understanding these issues, to understanding the power dynamics, make sure that we talk to the right people. As I've said in my presentation, the urbanized indigenous peoples of my tribe have total different realities from the one who are in the communities facing climate crisis and facing all these shocks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suli. So a huge amount to reflect on and think about. We've only clearly just scratched the surface on this, but it's brilliant to be able to have your lived experience and your views, which are, I think there's probably more questions than are answers, but then that's the sign of a good talk, I think. So
Welcome to my world. I thought that I come up with a solution.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry for that.
Not at all, not at all. We're all of a scientific way of thinking, so we've got to get our head around some of these knotty issues and recognize when things are not working, and we need to take different approaches, and we need to be brave in challenging and working together to try and challenge these issues. So loads of food for thought. We will be sharing the presentation round. Thank you for all the referencing on that as well. We'll try and pull some of those, but if we could share some of that referencing and some of the papers, particularly about the shut up and listen, I think everybody could do with reading that. And it would be, and then we look forward to having more from the DAP. For everybody on the call, there are other talks that we will be having, and as I say, Suli is one of our DAP members, so we will be engaging with him more. So if anybody has any other questions, we can always share them with Suli, and he can answer them probably in a much more extended time. But this is just the beginning of the conversation as we try and improve the way that we all work together. So thank you very much for your time, and look forward to seeing you at the next teaching. And thank you again, Suli. And hopefully the weather dies down and everything's calmer tonight for you.
Yeah. Lastly, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the wonderful opportunity to talk to you. I was a bit worried because this is a group of people that I don't really know personally, but I think we are paddling the same canoe, as we say back home. My answers keep on giving me questions. My effort of trying to find solution keep on giving me questions. And in the scientific community, you're correct. We are together in trying to find questions, and we are in this together. And all the best to your day. I'll go and see what I'll have for dinner. Thank you.
Well, enjoy. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.